Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to take a look at recent sales on eBay for loose graded vintage Star Wars figures. And as you can tell by this thumbnail, some pretty awesome items. We had a YPS Snowtrooper, which is a Spanish PvP figure that was encased by AFA along with the original magazine that it was packed with. We had a Vinyl Cape Jawa and pretty much everything in between, some Last 17 and Droids figures. AFA and UKG loose graded items. So as always, thank you to my Patreon supporters. They get my videos 24 hours early access. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is where you can go to sign up. All right. We're going to start off with a heater. This is a UKG 90% Vinyl Cape Jawa. I feel like we've seen like 5 or 6 of these over the last 6 months. So nothing is truly rare. I mean, it's crazy how many of these we've seen. UKG 90s, 85s, AFA 80s and 85s. It's at least 6 that I can remember off the top of my head. This one sold in an auction over in the UK for £2,740, which is $3,463 US. So it keeps kind of coming back down. I don't know if you've noticed that, but pretty consistently, the UKG 90s for the Vinyl Cape Jawa, I want to say 6 months ago or so, towards the beginning of this year, they were going for $4,000 to $4,400 US. Now it's $3,400 US. How low will it go? I don't know, but that to me seems like a really fair price. I mean, in the current environment, that's a price I'd pay in a heartbeat. Brand new case style, beautiful example. And again, $3,463 US in an auction for that one. Here is the no COO brown-haired Luke Farm Boy. This was being sold by Collectibles Investment Brokerage. And it's funny because a friend of mine named Matt, he told me like 2 or 3 weeks ago, he's like, "Ugh, I just cannot find the no COO brown-haired Luke Farm Boy. I just don't see them anywhere." They appeared on Palatoys and Tri-Logos. And I messaged him back and I said, "They're not rare. They come up all the time. Just be patient." And he kind of mouthed off to me, Matt. And I said, "I'm telling you that you'll find one." Well, I've got 2 in this auction lot that popped up. One of them was AFA 80+. The other one was a UKG 80% matte. This one sold in an auction for $285, which I thought was a good deal. AFA 85s, I don't know what they'd go for in the current environment. I want to say $550 to $600, somewhere in that ballpark for an 85 grade. But this was an 80+. But a beautiful example overall. Maybe just some light discoloration to the limbs relative to the tunic and torso piece. Here was another one, same issue. It was a UKG 80%, but you can see very clearly that this figure has some discoloration to the arms, maybe a little bit more than the AFA graded example. And it was graded by UKG 80%, 85 for the paint, and I think that's correctly graded. It's about an 80% grade. That one sold in an auction for £170, which is $215 US plus shipping. So, you know, once you account for the shipping difference from the UK to here, they sold for pretty much the same price. I mean, you could argue that this one sold a little bit more because it's maybe AFA graded and it's the 80 plus versus the UKG 80 with an 85% subgrade, but I consider them about equal. And, you know, this one went a little bit less, even accounting for the shipping difference. Next up, the same seller also had an orange-haired Luke Bespin. So very clearly, it's the orange hair. Don't get it confused with like the mustard hair or like the olive green hair. I mean, there's so many subtle variations. But if you look at it really close, you can tell that this is absolutely the orange-haired Luke Bespin. And this is a Hong Kong COO. It was graded 80% with a 75% subgrade for the paint, mainly because the utility belt had some nicks to it. It still sold for £263, which is $332 US. AFA 85s can set you back $500 to $600. I think Chris W. over at Rogue 5 Toys had an AFA 85, and I want to say it was like $500, $600. I could be wrong, though. A friend of mine picked that one up, so maybe he can comment in the comment for this video. Make sure to leave a like, by the way, if you like this video. But I know that a friend of mine did pick it up from Chris, and I want to say it was in that ballpark. But this UKG 80% sold for $332 US. Some other items from CIB. This was an AFA 80 solid dome R2-D2, just the light blue paint apps, not the dark blue. And so it's just labeled as Hong Kong R2-D2. They only label it on the AFA label if it's the dark blue dome. They don't, otherwise they just leave it alone. So this is kind of the standard version of R2-D2. 172.50 on that, pretty good deal for an 80 grade. Here is that YPS Stormtrooper. So, again, if you're new to this item, this is a Spanish PBP SCAR COO. So, but it's packed in with a G.I. Joe style weapon. And it was included with this particular magazine, issue 510 of YPS. It's a German magazine, and it was in a baggie with the figure and the weapon. So it's pretty sought after. It's not a particularly rare variant of the figure, but it was packed in with a G.I. Joe style weapon or an Action Force style weapon. So that's what makes it desirable. This was an AFA 85 archival case. Looked every bit of an 85. Hard torso, alternate weapon, AFA 85. But it is a Spanish PvP figure, to my knowledge, with a SCAR COO. 1454, that's a big number. There was a UKG 85 that was encased just like this and included the magazine that sold on Facebook. And I want to say it was $750 to $850, somewhere in that ballpark. So this is a bigger number, but it was a UKG 85 versus an AFA 85. This obviously got a lot more eyeballs since it's on eBay. And with CIB items, I tend to think that they always sell for $200 or $300 more sometimes when you talk about some of these rarities. They also had a dark green chest Hong Kong Boba Fett. You can see very clearly there that the chest armor and the neck armor is a much darker green than the standard Hong Kong. That one sold for $242.50. And then here was a Taiwan UKG 90% that sold in the UK, 395 pounds, which is $500 US. That's a big, big number, but it is a 90% UKG gold level, brand new case style, beautiful example. That looks every bit of a 92. It's very, very clean figure, but that one went for a lot more money than I was expecting. And then here was a beautiful Spanish POC Boba Fett, UKG 80%. And could you argue that maybe it's a little overgraded? Maybe. You can see the wear around the utility belt on the pouches, things like that. But I found, as I've talked about, that UKG tends to grade a little faster and looser with Spanish POCs especially, just because they were known to come right out of the factory in pretty rough shape. And you can see there a lot of wear to the paint. The paint just doesn't stay on very well, very weak welds. Would it get an 80% from AFA? No, I don't think so. I think it would get a 70 or 75. But it almost doesn't really matter what the grade is, because the Spanish POC Boba Fett is a very desirable figure. And it's always expensive. This one was listed for 1,600 pounds. The best offer accepted was 1,225 pounds, which equates to $1,550 US. So that just shows you how expensive that particular figure is. It's just a very, very pricey variant that doesn't pop up often. Although I think we've seen one or two that have come up on eBay here recently. I think one was a UKG 70% that I think is still available on eBay as of the making of this video. But this 80% is in much better condition, although I would still argue probably overgraded. The paint got a 75, figure 80. I would have rounded it down to a 75 personally, just because of the paint damage to the belt, very light wear to the chest armor paint. The shoulder pauldrons have chipping, and then obviously the face visor has some paint wear as well. So I think that to me is personally enough to bring that down to a 75. I don't know what it would get at AFA. It's just so hard to gauge with these Spanish figures. AFA grades them looser too. There is no doubt about that. I've got a Spanish POC Tusken Raider that's graded AFA 80, and if it was a standard Hong Kong in the similar condition, no way it gets the 80 grade. So I think all the grading companies grade a little bit looser for the Spanish POCs and sometimes the PBPs. But this one, to me, even accounting for the fact that it's a POC, I still think this is more like a 75. Again, I wouldn't care. I don't care what the grade is on it. It's just one of those very desirable, very hard to find figures. And again, it sold for $1,550 US. Then here is just the standard Hong Kong Boba Fett. And you can see the color difference to the chest armor on this one versus this one. So it's two down. So that's the dark green chest as labeled by AFA. That's the standard green Hong Kong Boba Fett. So it's nice to see some differences. There is also a light green chest. So they've got three different ways that they label it now with AFA. Light green, dark green, and then just standard Hong Kong with nothing about the chest armor. That one sold for $214. So pretty cool there. So for you variant hunters, there you go. You know, AFA starting to differentiate a little bit with just the standard Hong Kong Boba Fett's. Here was an AFA 85 Death Squad Commander with the dark blue emblem. I would argue that it's probably overgraded. You can see some wear around the glove. You can see some wear on the belt buckle, and then also a lot of wear on the kind of utility pouch that's in silver there. I don't think that's an 85 to me personally, but it got the 85. 169 was the winning bid. Here was an AFA 85 Zuckuss. This one does not have circles on knees and heels, which is what they usually do for that particular variation. If it doesn't have the circles on the back of the knees and heels, then they just label it Zuckuss. So there's two different variations for the Hong Kong Zuckuss there. That one sold for 96 bucks. Good deal for an AFA 85. Here's the gray body IG88 Hong Kong, 103.50 on that one. That's a good deal there. I think I paid closer to 150 for my AFA 85. So pretty good bargain, I think, on that one. AFA 85 Imperial Commander, flesh face, curved eyes. There's another one with wide face, pale face. I mean, there's so many different variations for the Imperial Commander. That one sold for 86 bucks. Really good deal on that one as well. Same seller also had the Hoth Snow Trooper, AFA 85, just as the standard Hong Kong. That one sold for 152.50. So again, all of these are fairly common figures. You can argue that it might be slightly overgraded with the paint splash around the crotch area and then on that leg by the hip. But they gave it the 85. You know, you just never know what grader is going to look at your item at AFA or CIB or CAS at UKG. You don't know what kind of mood they're in, okay? And so this is on the lower end of the AFA 85s, just given the factory paint splash. But it got the 85 and 152.50. Here's the China Stormtrooper AFA 85. That one sold for 198 and change. Again, I thought that was pretty fair. It seems like, you know, maybe they grade that one a little looser than the standard Hong Kong because the torso color is different than the limbs. You can see very clearly that it is. And I feel like with the Hong Kong, they don't allow that color differentiation at all to get an 85. With the China, they do, probably because the plastic quality is lesser. I don't know, but that's my guess. Or maybe just even straight out of the factory, there was a slight color variation versus, you know, between the limbs and the torso. But 198.39, good deal. Here are some last 17 from a seller down in Australia. I actually was thinking about bidding on one, and then I forgot about it because I was watching John Wick 3 again. I love that movie, by the way. AFA 85 Plus General Lando sold for 305. We had the Luke Battle Poncho, AFA 85 archival case, new case style. That one sold for 317. The Imperial Gunner AFA 85 sold for 319. All of those prices are very fair. Here was the one I was thinking about bidding on. I don't know why. I was thinking about getting this one. A Monoman AFA 85 Plus. I had a bid set up for like 410. And is it worth that? I don't know. That's just what I had. That's just the bid I had. The problem was it was $35 shipping from Australia. But it's an 85 plus, tougher to find, and I wouldn't mind picking this figure up eventually. So I just forgot about it, unfortunately. It was ending right when we were in the heart of John Wick stabbing some poor thug right in the forehead with a butcher knife. And I got really caught up with it. I love violence. And so anyway, I forgot about it, and it did sell for $355, and I should have set my snipe up, but I forgot about it. Here was an AFA 85 Yak Face, new case style. That one sold for $970. Pretty healthy final sales price on that one. We've seen a few go for a lot lower here lately, like $800, $750, that kind of ballpark, $850. But that one did sell for $970, so very strong price for an AFA 85. And then this is the one I want to talk the most about. This was an archival case, uncirculated 90 A-Wing pilot. And a friend of mine said he bid on it, and it went from like 300 to 1,035 in the last 3 seconds of the auction. And I personally think it's not a 90. Okay, now it could be reflections. Okay, but look really closely at the silver chest piece. To me, it looks like paint rub, and that's an area that we talk about all the time on the A-Wing pilot that you got to be very careful about. Is that silver paint apps on the chest piece on the vest can get rubs on it really easily. It could be reflections. Okay, there's no definite on this. From my perspective, we've got two different angles, and both angles in the photos show it as having rub on that silver paint app. So it's not a 90 in my opinion. And so I told him it's a blessing in disguise that you didn't win this, because I don't think it's worth $1,035. Would I have paid $400 for it? Yeah. I think that's a fair number, maybe even higher, but maybe up to 500 because of the uncirculated designation. But I think if you cracked it open and you sent it back into AFA, it would not get the 90 grade. I think it would get an 80 personally. And again, I don't know for sure that the silver paint apps have rubs, but again, we've got two different photos and both of them show black where the silver paint usually is. So I think 1035 is too much. I would not have paid that. Two droids figures, the partners in crime. We've got C-3PO, kind of a loose shoulder there. That's kind of interesting. And I don't know enough about the droid C-3PO to know if that's kind of standard, but it did get the AFA 85, droid C-3PO, AFA 85, new case style, kind of cockeyed in the case. C-3PO is kind of trying to get out there, but that's a common problem as well. You can see there by his feet that is not centered perfectly. That would drive me nuts. My OCD just couldn't handle that. It sold for $760, and then there was also the droid's R2-D2 pop-up lightsaber, and this one was graded by UKG with the coin, UKG 85%, and it is a beauty. Look at that. Look at that sticker. It's pretty nice. You could argue it's got a little bit of yellowing, but not much, not much. And that droid's coin is in immaculate condition. So the figure got an 85, paint 90, coin 85 for an overall 85. That one is a stunner. I would like to have had that. I got to be honest with you. That was a nice one. It was listed for 1,200 pounds. The best offer accepted was 1,100 pounds, which equates to almost 1,400 US dollars. And is it worth that? I don't know, but that's a number that I'd pay. It's a pretty nice looking example, and I just love that figure. That is a beautiful figure. And then finally, we had this first shot prototype indoor Rebel Commando that was also a molded face variant, Hong Kong, and also a photo sample that was used for the photo of the indoor Rebel Commando on the backs of the Kenner card backs. So it's got a lot going on for it, as we talked about in my What to Buy video a couple weeks back. Archival case, AFA 80. It was a first shot prototype and a photo sample and a molded face. So it's got three tougher to find variations / pre-production things going on for it. And I wanted it. I really did. But I knew it would go way too high. I was thinking if it stayed around $1,000 that I'd throw in kind of a softball offer, but it sold for $1,901. And is it worth that? Probably. It's just got a lot of cool things going on about that figure. And one thing that I've heard a lot on Instagram as it relates to Jeff Jacobs' pending sale next year on Hakes Auctions for licensed stuff. Okay, so his collection is mainly licensed, just standard retail release figures. They're the best there is, right? And it's pretty much everything there is. His only kind of pre-production items are the Revenge of the Jedi proof cards. He's got all 50 of them. So the comments on Instagram, they seem to think because of this flood of supply of really nice high-grade retail release items that, Mox, loose graded, tri-logos, Kenner, all that, because all that's hitting next year, that it might push high-end collectors into even more into pre-production. Items like this, Rebel Commando, items like proof cards, Revenge of the Jedi proof cards. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. If you are a big-time buyer and you have a lot of disposable income and you're spending a lot of money on these types of items, and when I say these types of items, I mean everything else that we looked at in this video. High-grade, loose-graded, high-grade mint on card, whatever. It's something to keep in mind is that what are those prices going to do next year? And maybe as you're leaving me a like again, you can comment below with your thoughts on that. But it's an interesting comment that I heard a lot on Facebook as well as on Instagram from various people reacting to the Jeff Jacobs announcement from Hakes that, potentially pre-production and first shot prototypes and proof cards, those will see an even higher prices next year as people are a little wary of the massive supply of standard, very high grade retail release items hitting next year. It's just food for thought. I'm spitballing here. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.